With the insiders, Chris Johnston and Pierre LeBrun. Gentlemen, a day off at the beach always feels better after an honest day's work. And the Edmonton Oilers couldn't, in good conscience, take a day off after their Game 3 performance. So what resulted, Pierre, was a change in plan and a pretty brisk, up-tempo, full-team skate.
Yeah, no question about it. I know one member of the Oilers front office said it was their best practice in about a month, which is telling. But part of that is that they haven't had a lot of full practices, and I think that went into the decision from the coaching staff to reverse course here and have a full practice. In fact, I was told that there are some members of the coaching staff that feel like there have been too many optional practices, and it showed in their legs for the Edmonton Oilers in Game 3 that they looked sluggish. And so if you looked at this practice, not only was it brisk, as you said, Ryan, but near the end of practice, if you look, the D were working on cardio. Connor McDavid came down to work with the D on the cardio, so very much a high-tempo practice that you usually see at the start of the season, I think, because the Oilers feel they needed that.
It's funny, those same D were out there actually for their optional skate before Game 3 doing the same work, so you wonder if it's a continuation there. You know, one thing that I found interesting is Matthias Ekholm, obviously a veteran on this blue line. You know, after practice mentioned for him, this was all mental. He's like, we're not going out there to figure out our game. We're not reinventing any wheels. And he said, you guys reminded us all year we're the oldest team in the league. He said, I heard that a million times. He said, this is a time where he believes it's going to pay off for them. Maybe not necessarily on the conditioning side, but more on the mental side in terms of putting that kind of loss behind them. And when you look throughout this Oilers spring, I think he can point to a few, examples. I mean, you just start in Los Angeles where everything began 2 months ago for Edmonton, that they've been able to put these losses behind them. And so he said today was just a day to do that honest work you mentioned and to move forward towards Game 4.
Yeah, not a lot of X's and O's, lots of line rushes, lots of puck touches, lots of shots on net. You can tell Chris Knobloch and his staff wanted this team to get feeling it again with the puck, because they didn't seem to have it a lot in game number 3. And by the way, Connor McDavid bookended the practice. So he did cardio at the end with the D. Also was out early helping warm up the goaltenders before practice as well. I think, guys, the Oilers know they got outside themselves. They got outside their game. That whole idea of protect your crease and we're not going to be pushed around, all that stuff. And I'm not talking about the third period. The first 40 minutes, Pierre, I thought the Oilers overdid it. And listening to their answers today, I think they agree. I think we'll see a more subtle approach to that stuff in Game 4.
Yeah, I think you'll see more of what you saw in the opening 2 games, especially in Game 1. I thought the Oilers were terrific just playing within the whistles. But, even when I asked Leon Draisaitl on this day about him getting tangled up with Sam Bennett, Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, these guys drive the opposition crazy. But Leon Draisaitl poo-pooed my notion there and says they are not going crazy. They're not going to lose their composure again, and they understand that they can't have another night like that. But
he did also call it a UFC event in the third period.
There you go. So hence my follow-up. But, at the end of the day, you can't ignore the way the Panthers make other teams feel. This is a repetitive act that we're seeing in terms of the teams that Florida beats up on in the playoffs. So if there's a team in this league that I believe has the veteran maturity to look the other way, it is, in fact, the Edmonton Oilers, but we didn't see that in Game 3.
Well, there's some proof of concept, though. Game 1 was pretty good on that front. And the one area, though, you can tell that maybe it's getting a little bit somewhere between the ears. And look, there's time to flush it here. But, you heard multiple Oilers players, both immediately after Game 3, but even on the off day, mention that they think the Panthers are getting away with a little bit more. And so, I think that'll be an interesting reset point. I did ask Chris Knobloch about that, and he basically said, look, it's hockey. Both sides could find examples of these things. He's like, we just have to play, which is probably what you're talking about, play our game and, let the chips fall where they may, because you get into that sort of back and forth, talking referees, making excuses, all those types of things. I'm not saying there was a lot in that game. There was a ton of penalties called. There was a ton of potential penalties left uncalled in Game 3, but clearly that's not the style that suits the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, and during practice, one member of the front office, of the Oilers front office, said to me, listen, we're a tough team, but if this is a series where we're trying to prove that we're as physical and as tough as the Florida Panthers, we're not going to win the Stanley Cup. They have to go back to playing their brand of hockey, the Oilers brand.
I'll put a face to it. Jake Wallman, who, by the way, in his first Stanley Cup Final here, I thought he overdid it on a number of different occasions, just trying to prove a point about the Oilers' space being the Oilers' space. He was probably one of the main culprits, and will cost him $10,000 in fines handed down by the National Hockey League. We got to give the Florida Panthers some credit. They earned their day off, and so they got their day off today, CJ. But when you think about the fact that a couple of pretty key members of this team haven't really checked in meaningfully offensively, and news today that Sam Reinhart is back to 100% according to his head coach. It's heading in the right direction for the Panthers.
Yeah, a little tasty treat from Paul Maurice there. Just asked about where he sees Reinhart trending. He did miss a game in the Eastern Conference Final against Carolina. As we talked about back in Edmonton, missed a practice at that point there, and scores a big goal after missing an overtime breakaway in sort of uncharacteristic fashion. And so we're always guessing a little bit with health, I think, in the playoffs. But the fact that the Panthers are feeling that way, that he's healthy, I mean, that's a huge piece for them. I mean, he was a huge part of their cup win last year with playoff success, 50-plus goal scorer. And, they're looking for, as much as we can focus on Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand just filling the net from the Florida side, I mean, some of their bigger players like the Reinhart, Barkov, they've not been breaking through. And so there's some confidence we found there. And I also think, man, 2 off days, the Panthers probably don't mind this. Right now, they're feeling pretty good about themselves, and players like Reinhart are getting a little bit more rest.
No one benefits more than double off days before Game 3 and after Game 3 than Sergei Bobrovsky. The Panthers have always been concerned about his energy levels, and he was outstanding in Game 3 when he needed to be in a game that was lopsided. But, man, another double off day for Sergei Bobrovsky at his age heading into Game 4, that's not nothing.
And you wonder where the head coach's head is at on Stuart Skinner, if you're Chris Knobloch. So he's been asked a couple of times. They said no decision has been made yet. Calvin Pickard has been so good coming in, you guys, in relief. And he's given them big performances where Stuart Skinner has faltered. But I'm not convinced that they're seriously considering that for the next game. Pierre, what's your sense of it?
I think they're going back to Skinner based on the fact that he's had tremendous bounce-back ability. Now, it's noteworthy that Chris Knobloch had a chance to simply say he was going back to Skinner and he wouldn't commit to it. But then he spent the rest of his answer, just like after Game 3, basically saying this isn't about Stuart Skinner, what happened last night. It was a team-wide failure. So it seemed to me like he's defending his goalie without being ready to announce that he's going back to him.
It would be a massive card to play, though. And he did point out Calvin Pickard's 6-0 record in this playoffs. Obviously got a big win for them last year in the Vancouver series, too. So it's not as though they don't have confidence in the backup. This isn't the kind of guy you're hoping you never see, which is the case sometimes with your number 2. But I'm with you guys. My feeling is he's winking at Skinner coming in, but he's not declaring it.
Maybe too soon. I mean, we'll see what happens. If they end up losing Game 4 and it's time to break the glass in case of emergency, maybe you see that heading back home. Last element, Oiler power play. It was a big swing here in this last game. The Panthers special teams were obviously much, much better, Pierre. It's something that the Oilers know they need to work on to not sap momentum from their team.
Yeah, a couple of things for me. I mean, this Oilers power play over the last few years, no one's been better. But, you lose Zach Hyman for the season. And to me, when Zach Hyman's on that first power play unit, when it's not Corey Perry, but it's Zach Hyman, I think his net front presence is really missed in this Stanley Cup Final, but especially on the power play. Number 2, with Nugent Hopkins being taken off that first unit to start the second period in Game 3 and Jake Wallman going on, that's a different look as well. I can't even remember. You would know, Ryan, the last time the Oilers had 2 defensemen on the first power play unit. So something to watch moving forward.
And there's a little bitter taste there, right? The Oilers get an early power play in Game 2. They don't score on Game 3. I mean, the margins, especially in Game 2, a game that goes to double overtime, a big goal there might have made a difference. So it's almost situational versus just percentage-based. Take advantage when you get those shots early in the game.
It would seem this is one of those moments where Chris Knobloch makes a tweak or two. He knows exactly what his group needs. This feels like the time in the series where he would do that, but didn't show any changes at all at practice. Same line combinations, same D pairings, and Nugent Hopkins, again, taking a maintenance day.